It all began with a trip to the moon, but, quote, the moon turned out to completely suck. Titus and his buddies, 3 girls and 3 guys, took the trip to fill the empty days of their spring break. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal, but it was. While out at a low-grav club on the moon, or low gravity in their slang, 2 things happen that radically alter the course of Titus's life. He meets Violet, and he's hacked. And so begins today's Velshi Band Book Club feature, M.T. Anderson's best-selling and award-winning dystopian young adult novel called Feed. Everything in Titus and his friends' world is informed by The Feed, which is a commercial brain implant that allows constant access to the internet, including a relentless stream of ads. Quote, the thing about The Feed, the thing that made it really big, is that it knows everything you want and hope for, sometimes before you even know what those things are. It can tell you how to get them and help you make buying decisions that are hard. Everything we think and feel is taken in by the corporations, mainly by data ones like FeedLink and OnFeed and American Feedware. And they make a special profile, one that's keyed just to you. Now, in the warped American society that Anderson has created in Feed, it is impossible to extricate yourself from the feed. Having a feed implant doesn't just function as social cachet. It allows access to culture, to trend, to entertainment, to information. It's the primary means of communicating. Talking has become secondary, an afterthought. Writing is a rarity. Physically, too, the feed is physiologically intertwined with one's brain and one's body, keeping memories, dictating emotions, influencing your motor skills. In Feed, Anderson utilizes the familiarity of certain tropes from the young adult genre, including a central doomed romance and instances of youthful rebellion, to wholly explore complex topics, including the control that consumerism yields over society, our reliance on technology, corporate overreach, loss of individuality, class division, and the slow erosion of language. Language in particular is a through line throughout the entire novel. Anderson is careful to make the point that even though these characters have unlimited access to knowledge, their ability to critically think has alarmingly atrophied. Titus and his friends' vocabulary is extremely limited, heavily relying on slang terms and abbreviations. Titus is considered above average because he's got a simple grasp of simile and metaphor. Here's the thing. Feed was written in 2002, 2 years before the creation of Facebook, 4 years before the advent of the news feed, and years still before advertising flooded social media. If it were written today, I swear, an editor would slash entire sections for being too on the nose. I know I've used the adjective prescient to describe previous Velshi Band Book Club features, including George Orwell's 1984 and Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. But it's impossible to discuss Feed without noting its eerily predictive quality. We've read many young adult novels on the Velshi Band Book Club, from classics like Bridge to Terabithia to crucial contemporary works like The Hate You Give. And I cannot think of a book more critical to get into the hands of young people right now than Feed, which means, of course, that it's been banned and challenged routinely since its publication. Right after a quick commercial break, I'll be joined by M.T. Anderson, the author of numerous books, including today's crucial Velshi Band Book Club feature, Feed. Today's meeting of the Velshi Band Book Club is officially in session. I'm joined now by M.T. Anderson, author of today's award-winning young adult novel, Feed. M.T., welcome to the Velshi Band Book Club. Thank you for being with us.
No, thanks, and thanks for just talking about books.
Well, it's actually the most enjoyable part of what we do here. Let me ask you something about Feed, which really stuck with me, is it isn't ultimately feasible in the book to opt out if you want to function in your novel's version of society. Talk to me about, it's a commentary on freedom in the digital world.
Yeah, well, I mean, how would you actually operate yourself if you, at the moment, sort of just lay down your phone and said, not using that again? You know what I mean? You can't apply for a job. You can't communicate with people. I mean, who memorizes phone numbers right now? But there's so many things that we get through this conduit. So, yeah, absolutely. I think it would be very hard to live if you adopted the kind of Luddite Amish approach.
I was an early adopter on social media, but I wouldn't have guessed that we'd be where we are today in terms of your phone knowing what you want and telling you the easiest way to buy things. How'd you think about this back when this book was published in 2002?
Well, I mean, I think the thing is, to predict the future, you don't need to know a lot about technology. You just need to think a lot about capitalism and where it's going to go. So for me, I mean, I grew up in the 1980s. So, and at the same time, obviously there wasn't like, something like a feed in your head was just a science fiction dream or a joke. But I still felt way back then, as a teenager, that I had the voice of advertising running through my head all the time. That there still was this kind of like persistent voice going into like, if you just buy this, you'll be loved, you'll be popular, come on.
Titus and his friends...
So,
go ahead.
No, so I just was going to say, like, yeah, it just seems to me that like already symbolically we had this operating, and now it's just become a neurological reality.
Right. You just, right, correct. You saw what it was, you saw what it would become, and then you put a little dystopian stuff in there, which the world is now catching up to you on. The book is interesting. Titus and his friends rebel in ways that are typical of any teenager. They in the words of the book, which is malfunction, which seems to be akin to experimenting with drugs. But their rebellion isn't rooted in criticism of the feed itself. What is it?
No, I mean, they seem kind of unaware of how bad things are getting in their world. And so one of the things I wanted to do is to create this kind of like slightly claustrophobic narrator. So you're trying to understand that world, but he's almost in the way because, like the way that we do hide ourselves now from information that would be inconvenient to us. In the same way, in the world of this book, like everyone is getting these lesions on their faces. And they don't ask where they're coming from or what might have caused them. Instead, they eventually decide, well, we've got them, so we might as well like accessorize them and make them kind of hot.
So ostensibly, the lesions appear from environmental causes, right? There's a sense that they become more pronounced, they become more widespread, they start to appear on celebrities, on their feed, and as you said, they become trendy and desirable. Two of the characters undergo surgery to receive artificial lesions, right? It's today's Botox, if you will. Violet has a negative reaction to the surgery, and that becomes a remarkable turning point in the book. Tell me a bit of the symbolism of that.
Yeah, well, so there is this girl who's sort of like, I think in many ways stands in for the reader, who got the feed late and is very suspicious of it in many ways. And the problem with her getting the feed late is that it means that the feed has not been as fully integrated with her. And I think it's like if you think about kids who have not been brought up with a phone and suddenly are kind of given that technology, there is a learning curve to it. But for her, that becomes a huge problem because it also means that when things start to go wrong with her feed, because it was implanted late, then suddenly all these corporations are saying like, well, we're really going to touch this case because you have not, in fact, been a great consumer. You know what I mean? Like you have to pay for this if you're going to somehow, if we're going to actually help you. So, I think, it ties things together that I feel like really are tied together in our society. I mean, you were just talking with Hakeem Jeffries about things like healthcare and the way that system forces us to do certain things. We can't believe anymore that politics and economics and health and everything are not all working together.
Interesting playing out today, in fact. The book was published in 2002. The edition I read was from 2012, which includes an author's note in which you say, I don't think this would have been an interesting book to write or to read if I had only hated the hyper-marketed world I described. For me, the key to the discomfort and the exploration is how much I love some of it, how much I still do want to be slick, like the people on the tube, beautiful, laughing, surrounded by friends, and how much I legitimately do think that the technology-based information resources at our command are now incredible. Okay, that was 2012. In 2025, you still struggling with that duality? You like the convenience of the digital world, but...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's incredible to be sitting here in my little kind of like crumbling, haunted 18th century house in the hills of Vermont and be able to like access like, archaeological things that I need to read or whatever else, that are from these obscure journals. But boom, I have them within 15 seconds. But on the other hand, what's going on, even in me, even in someone who has written about this, is you can feel the way that cognition is changing and that, in fact, we're being rewired by this. I have to actually carefully kind of like, prompt myself to read paper books, for example, because I know otherwise I'm going to be sitting there as I go towards the end of the chapter. I'm like, ooh, it's almost the end of the chapter. Then I can take a little break, look at Instagram. So, I mean, I think that even for those of us who are highly, highly wary and who understand that we're like giving some of our autonomy over, even for us, it's very, very difficult to actually resist. I mean, it does beautiful things.
Yeah, you use the metaphor of rewired. Your book is really about there's a literal wiring, and yet while we don't have brain implants, we are as wired as you describe in the book.
Yeah, I mean, there have been studies that show that we are literally being neurologically rewired by this, and there's a cognitive effect of this, and I'm worried about that because I feel like we need, and this connects in fact with banned books, we need integrated knowledge of how the world actually works. We need to understand these incredibly complex systems that we take part in all the time, like how we get our food, how we get our water, how we get our, how we get our tungsten. All these incredibly complex systems, we as voters and as consumers have to be educated about them. And it's terrifying the way that through things like book banning, through deregulation, all of these systems that are supposed to protect us from the things that we can't understand on our own or inform us about the things that we would not know about. All of these safeguards are being taken away, and that's terrifying.
Well, in the same way that when I talked to Margaret Atwood, I can't believe that this book was written in 1985. Talking to you sounds like this was a book that was published 2 weeks ago. Thank you to the newest member of the Belshey Band Book Club, M.T. Anderson, author of numerous books, including today's feature, Feed.